What's your biggest secret? My mom had a stroke when I was in the military. When I got out, I put my life on hold to take care of her. That lasted 2.5 years. She was on a feeding tube and diapers at the end. She was not there. What made her well, her was all gone. When she passed, I was glad. For many reasons. One of the reasons was I was just tired of changing my mom diapers. Shit gets everywhere in a diaper and I hated the places I had to wipe. I hated waking up in the morning knowing I had to change and feed her. I hated that work at least 3 times a day. I hated feeling like a piece of shit if I slept in knowing she needed to be changed as I took a break. I hated myself if I went to bed early and did not change her. When she passed, I was happy. I hate myself for it. Edit. Thank you, fellow users. Your responses have helped. Some of this I have been holding in for a while. I took care of my uncle after he had his last of many strokes where he couldn't speak or swallow anymore. I was already living there helping out, so I switched over to being his live-in primary caretaker. Like you described with your mother, it became like a crash course in being a CNA. He was still mentally there, but he had to do all of this work to perform rehab and he wasn't having much progress. He was on a feeding tube and had diabetes, so we had to regulate his insulin and manage feedings. After 7 months, his body eventually rejected eating from the stomach tube. He was already having shitting accidents regularly and then he began throwing up regularly. We took him to the hospital and the doctor basically said his body isn't taking in food anymore, so he was going to degrade quickly. When he was told that he no longer had to fight anymore, his face had an expression of complete relief. He was smiling at me the last time that I switched on his favorite TV show before leaving the room. Family flew into town the next morning and he was gone 2 days later. That might help you put things in perspective with your mom and your feelings of guilt. My uncle didn't want to fight any longer after 7 months, or sooner than that, but it seemed like family was pushing him. Your mother, had she had her faculties, would probably have been happy to just let go. She surely would not blame you wanting it to end. I'm pretty certain about that. You and I both did a good thing in taking care of them. Point 2. When my boyfriend, now ex, got sick, I ended up caring for him for 2.5 years. It was incredibly emotionally draining. Because I was a young, in my 20s, carer, I found no one who could relate to the experience. During that time he would verbally entertain the idea of killing himself, as he didn't want to deal with his illness and pain anymore. In the last year I would mentally reply, so hurry up and do it already. My new daydream was no longer him getting a diagnosis and better, but was him dying so I could move on. I want to be clear, if you're someone relying on another for your care, that comment does not relate to you. He was a gaslighter, would spend all day playing video games and barely acknowledge my existence unless it was to jack him off. On the weekends and after work I couldn't go hang with friends because how's he supposed to feel about that given he can't come with me, and he was insanely jealous of my male friends. Good times. Sounds like my ex, though he didn't need care. I kept trying to break up with him and he just wouldn't leave. I owned the house. I'd end things and the next day he'd just act like nothing happened. It made me feel like I was losing my mind. He had a bit of a drug problem and it got to the point where I was hoping he'd get a bad batch and die, then I'd be free. Sometimes it was so bad I'd think about tracking down fentanyl myself and spiking his supply. Now I look back and it scares me that I'd think like that, but I felt so trapped. I ended up getting out by buying a house in the woods and moving there and evicting him from my other one. He would have never just left if I didn't leave first. But he darkened my door for a few months after. He followed me to my new place one day. He'd show up and act like we were still together and he was going to join me. He'd call and text and give me such a hard time. When he finally moved on, it's like this 4-year storm cloud hanging over my head finally disappeared. Like 1,000 pounds was lifted off me. Okay, so story time. When I was out with my parents at a mall, I think I was around 15 to 16, I ran away from my parents to head to the Big W store. This is an Australian store BTW. Inside the store I made my way around. Just doing things like any other person. But anyway, as I was walking I wandered into the men's section, I heard a little boy that was about 5 running around and pulling things off the racks. I got mad at this because normally I was told not to be loud and to put stuff back, basically be the good kid, but this kid was screaming his head off and whining like a pig. I looked around and didn't see his parents or any adults around for that matter. So I went over to the kid and asked him where his parents were, but when this kid turned around yelled in my face, "Fuck off you fat pig, I don't need parents." I got furious. This led me to saying, "Now that's no way to talk, I just want to help you know because I am so nice." He promptly said go fuck yourself. He then ran off and continued to pull shit of the shelves and even pulled a mannequin, and hid it under the pile of clothes he had ripped off the shelves. Keep in mind this kid looked like a 5-year-old. So I did the only thing that I thought to do. Went and told on him. Nah. I waited for him to come running past me and stuck my leg out. The kid promptly fell face first into the ground and began to bawl. I then stepped over him and walked off. That's my secret. It got much worse because my sister took after my mom. She would sneak into my room in the middle of the night and cut me with knives. She would tell me to kill myself. My mom and her would argue and then take turns taking it out on me. I remember hiding in my room crying while hearing them scream at each other in the living room, knowing what would happen next. Even at 34 I went home for a short visit and it was just as bad if not worse. I stay far away tbh, but every so often I'll get a random text from my sister telling me to kill myself. Why? 'Cause she doesn't want to share inheritance when our mom goes. My mom is afraid of my sister. I can't be around them, especially not alone, or they start trying to abuse me. There is so much they did to me it sometimes even surprises me when I think about it, and I lived it, yeah no? As for me, I put an ocean between us. I've done therapy like BWRT and worked really hard to get past the trauma and CPTSD. I am doing much better and I have an honest and great husband who loves me and I feel so safe. I also spend a lot of time helping others in similar places get past it and move forward now to try and give back and help them get to a place where they feel safe. Thank you for asking. Edit: if you see this and you've been through abuse and have trouble getting past it and want to try, feel free to message me. I'll try my best to help and / or provide links to helpful resources, books, and therapies. You're not alone. I was getting beaten up by some bullies, like bad **t crazy bullies with cutters and flip knives, and they weren't bigger than me or anything, nor was I too weak to fight them. But at that point the whole bullying and stuff had been going on for months, and when they finally pinned me on the ground, I didn't fight anymore. Instead I just looked at them and said, "Make it quick." They looked both terrified and scoffed. They didn't cut me or stab me or anything after that. They even left me alone for an entire semester. It was only after the school year ended when one of them talked to me. "You know, we could have killed you, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, I know." He then asked me, "Then why didn't you fight back then?" I just shrugged, smiled, and said in the most nonchalant voice, "Because I would have let you." Never told anyone. And haven't spoken about it until now either. I was in a similar situation. My middle school had assigned seating in lunch, and I sat with my bully for my last year. He basically turned a table of my friends against me, and would harass me during lunch and class. He would stab and cut me with broken / sharpened pencils and those sharp pieces of metal used to remove staples. And he would do it at lunch if I talked without being directly talked to. I still have scars on my hands and arms from him. Luckily, it ended freshman year when he stole my glasses and spit a loogie on them. So I grabbed him by the back of his head and kept hitting his face into his locker. I got suspended, with threat of expulsion and going to court/juvie, and had to see the school counselor for the rest of the year. He got fucking nothing. I still have lingering trauma and trust issues from that year. And I guess one of my secrets for this thread would be that I'm happy he died. In fact, one of my roommates, who was also bullied by him, told me. And we cracked open a beer and celebrated. This is not a secret, but the guilt I feel is overwhelming. My decision that day was the wrong one. I lived in the hood. Tall Pine LN in Jacksonville, FL. As far as I knew, I was the only white dude there. I became friendly with my downstairs neighbor, but, being a truck driver, we did not get to hang out much. A few times we slapped bones on the table with some other tenants while cranking whatever had the hardest bass, and a few meals were shared. I was leaving to pick up a load at the Budweiser plant and an older lady politely stopped me and explained who she was. The mother of my downstairs neighbor. She gave me her number and asked me to call her if he was acting weird. Turns out, he had a new friend who was using his apartment to cut rocks while feeding them to him. I didn't know this yet. Fast forward a month or so, another load at Budweiser heading to Kentucky. Apartment is clean, truck is inspected, loaded, and warmed up. I take the trash to the dumpster and toss it in. As I turn around, my neighbor is 2 feet away from me, eyes wide, gritting his teeth, just staring at me. I didn't hear him run up because he was in his socks. I asked if he was okay and he took off running to his apartment. I immediately called his mom to come over and explained that I had to leave because Budweiser is by appointment only and if you miss that window you miss the load, so dispatch says. His mother called me about 6:30 that night and explained that she did not get there in time and he went inside and shot himself. I made the wrong decision that day. I should have said fuck the Budweiser load and stayed with him until his mother arrived. I honestly feel that if I had stayed, he would be alive. The guilt I feel for not staying with him could never compare to the pain of losing a son, but, I still carry it with me just as she does. I am sorry. I made the wrong decision. I am on mobile and don't know how to format my message, so bear with me. I was a 5M at the time of this story. My mother dropped me and my 3F-year-old sibling off at our teenage half-cousin's place to spend the night. I remember the Grinch being on the TV and wanting to watch, but the teenage cousins took me and their 6F-sibling to another room. They made us strip and made me hurt my cousin by biting her vagina and made her bite my penis. Neither of us wanted to, but they pulled the whole "if you don't listen to us we will tell your parents you were bad." At the time I had an abusive stepfather. So that was actually the start of an entire child sex ring within the cousin's whole extended family. For 2 years I never said anything about it and the police found out about the situation. Since I was the only outsider, all the parents of the rest of the family tries to blame it all on me, a 7-year-old boy. It caused years of legal problems for my mother and caused her to lose custody of my half-sister. To this day I still pretend to not remember any of it and have only ever told my significant other after having a really huge trigger cause me to explode. Here it goes. Mom and dad passed, grandma too. Grandpa was the only one left. Not only grandson, but the only one who took care of him. We suddenly realized he had COPD, lung disease. Since I'm the only one taking care of him, put him in a nursing home. He totally refuses, but had no choice. One day he needed hospitalization because of a fever, just in case. Doctors said it was nothing serious. On the 5th day at the hospital, he starts about how he wanted to go back home, explained to him that as long as he wasn't better, it was a no-go. On the 6th day in the morning, I give him a call to his cell phone, to see if he needed anything when I go there on the afternoon visiting hours. He gets really angry and annoyed on going back home, looked like they would discharge him next day. I got really tough on that point, even angry, and told him he needed to understand that I couldn't take care of him at his house, and that we couldn't afford home care. We got off the phone in a very bad mood. 2 hours later, I get a call from the clinic. He had passed, heart attack. I am convinced that he got so bitter after our argument his heart just couldn't take it. I've been feeling guilty about this ever since. Only me and my son know about this phone call. Just for context, my grandpa was like a father to me. He raised me since the age of 10, Mom couldn't, Dad decided he'd better not. He passed on 2016, at 75. I drink more often than I tell anyone. Because I'm high functioning as an alcoholic, it's hard for me to convince myself to change. I have a great job, I make more money than my parents ever did, I graduated from college summa cum laude and top of almost every class. I keep thinking that if it's working for me, why should I stop? But my labs came back with elevated liver enzymes, I've lost a couple teeth, partially because of crowding, but I often pass out at night without brushing, because I can't sleep unless I exhaust myself with alcohol. I'm sure that accelerated my tooth loss. Drinking a lot causes me to have anxiety, so I drink more to make it go away. Now that I have a job I love, alcohol is the #1 contributor to my stress, weight gain, anxiety, wasting time that I could have used to be productive, but I literally don't want to stop drinking. Not that I can't stop, I just don't want to. I have never had a drink and had it not make me happy. I always feel good when I drink, so why should I let it go? It's probably killing me and I'm not stopping, and I feel really bad about that because there are people who love me and want me to be healthy. Intellectually, I know what it does to me and I know I will regret it in the future. But it feels good right now. It always makes me happy. Also, I saw a dead dude once and ignored it because there were some girls with me and I didn't want them to see and freak out. I spent the first 20 years of my life thinking that I was straight, all the way up to the end of my junior year of college. I had already begun to question my sexuality when I met a guy and we ended up dating. It wasn't a long relationship, only a couple months, but it told me everything I needed to know, and I'm now quite certain that I'm gay, or at the very least bi. This, however, is where the problem sets in. Unfortunately, living in a small conservative Christian college town doesn't lend itself well to being LGBTQ+, so I can't feel comfortable telling anyone. The only member of my immediate family who knows is my older sister, and I only told her because I was already pretty sure that she was also queer. My parents have no idea, and if anyone found out, I could be kicked out of school and my relationships with almost everyone I've ever known would be in jeopardy. Truthfully, I hate that I have to keep such a big part of me a secret, but until I finish college and can move away, I'm well and truly stuck in the closet. Not my absolute biggest secret, but the biggest secret that no one IRL knows. I'm somewhat convinced that I have some form of ASD. Now I know, self-diagnoses are very unreliable, but after looking into it online with somebody who is diagnosed, I'm pretty confident that it's possible. I told him, the online guy, all sorts of experiences that seemed to fit the common list of symptoms he gave me, and he said much of it sounds exactly like him and, in his opinion, I very like have it. I've also taken the supposedly most accurate online test, and my result was very likely a minor, high-functioning, form. I'll probably never try to confirm this IRL though, because I don't want the shame of admitting I got my suspicions online, and I don't want to risk even more shame if I end up being wrong. Like, I can't even imagine what my doctor would think if I told him, hey, I think I might have ASD because of some reading and messaging I've done online, can you have me tested? And then revealing to my family and friends that I feel like something's wrong with me, which is really something I've always felt but that I've never openly admitted to them. All in all, the risks are too great in my view, so my suspicions will forever remain untested.